Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room. Additionally, the agendas and minutes of prior meetings are available on the city's website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended by the Planning Commission. The roles and responsibilities of the Planning Commission are outlined on the reverse side of tonight's agenda. State law establishes planning commissions. The commission is comprised of 9 members, all of whom have volunteered to serve. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by City Council. The other individuals seated at the table this evening are representatives of the city's planning department, the city attorney's office, and the city's planning consultant, Carlisle Wortman and Associates. If you wish to address the Planning Commission, please come forward when recognized and provide your name and address on the sign-on sheet. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks are to be addressed to the Planning Commission, not to anyone else in the room. At this time, I ask that all cell phones or any other devices that might disrupt this meeting, please either be placed in silent mode or be turned off. The roll call, Ms. Sarnicki, please.
Mr. Appidian. Here. Ms. Cruz. Mr. Faison.
Here.
Mr. Hudson.
Here.
Mr. Krant.
Here.
Ms. Koopa. Here. Mr. Zanzika.
Here.
Mr. Tagle.
Here.
Quorum present. Item number 2 on the agenda, approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Faison and seconded by Ms. Koopa. Roll call, Ms. Sarnicki, please.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Who was it seconded by?
Ms. Koopa.
Thank you. Mr. Faison.
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
Mr. Krant.
Yes.
Ms. Koopa.
Here, yes.
Mr. Zanzika.
Yes.
Mr. Tagle.
Yes.
Mr. Appidian.
Yes. Item number 3 on the agenda, approval of the minutes for the September 11, 2018 meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Mr. Faison again and seconded by Mr. Tagle. Roll call, Ms. Sarnicki, please.
Mr. Faison.
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
Mr. Krant.
Yes.
Ms. Koopa.
Yes.
Mr. Zanzika.
Yes.
Mr. Tagle.
Yes.
Mr. Appidian.
Yes. Item number 4, public comment for items not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to make a comment for items not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we move on to item number 5. Special use and preliminary site plan review. Special use and preliminary site plan review, file number SUJPLN 2017-003, proposed Bethesda Romanian Pentecostal Church addition, north side of Long Lake, east of John R., south of Tucker, 2075 East Long Lake, section 12, currently zoned R1C, one family residential district. Before we move on with this item on the agenda, I just want to disclose, as I did the first time we actually had this meeting a year and so ago, 14, 15 months ago, that I live about 900 feet east of this proposed project on Tucker. And I just want to disclose that for the public and for the record. And I believe Mr. Hudson also wanted to make a disclosure.
Yes, 23 years ago, I represented the applicant in its seeking approval for the church on the property where it's located today. I've had no contact with them since that initial engagement 23 years ago. I feel I'm not biased and I can fairly sit here and determine what I think, in my opinion, is the best solution for the question before the board tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Carlisle, Mr. Savant.
Yeah, I want to point out to the Planning Commission, to the audience, and most importantly to the petitioner, the Planning Commission taking action on this application for special use approval and preliminary site plan approval. You need 5 votes, 5 affirmative votes for approval. We have 2 absent members this evening, so I'm just informing you of your margin of error. You need 5 affirmative votes out of 7 members present for approval this evening. If you're comfortable with that, we can proceed. If you're not comfortable with that, then now's your chance to inform us if you want to postpone this and consider this at a different evening. I just heard a representative of the applicant indicate that they wish to proceed with this application.
Okay, Mr. Salvador, Mr. Carlisle. Yep, you want to make the presentation?
Yes, thank you. Remote. Thank you. Tonight before us is a proposal to put a church addition onto existing church located at John R. and Long Lake. The area outlined in yellow on the screen above you is the proposed addition area. It's a two-story addition located on the north side of the existing building. It's approximately 19,000 square feet. It is approximately, or it is 50 feet from the Tucker Road right-of-way. The building addition includes a multi-purpose room, 13 Sunday school classrooms, a worship education center, a basketball court, and a kitchen. The site is zoned R1C, and the proposed addition requires a special use approval. The floor plans are shown in front of you. It's a little bit difficult to read, but I just wanted to highlight some of the main features of the floor plans itself. The main, it's not showing up. Well, you can see this in the center is the basketball. Yeah, thank you. The basketball court area. That's the main highlight of the addition, and outlining that are the proposed classrooms as well. And then this floor plan shows the second story, which have additional classrooms as well. The proposed location, it can be seen by this photograph. This is actually taken from basically John R. looking back to the site. This is the area, large grass area is the area where the proposed addition is going to be. We do note that there is a berm that is located along the Tucker Road side of the street, Tucker Road elevation. That berm would have to be regraded as part of the application to put the actual addition in that location. The applicant has provided a landscaping plan. The landscaping plan is intended to screen the proposed addition from Tucker and from portions of John R. Tucker Road is at the bottom of this site shown in front of you. This is a mix of deciduous as well as evergreen trees used, used to screen the proposed addition from Tucker. This item was last reviewed by the Planning Commission at your July 25th, 2017 meeting. At that meeting, the Planning Commission and the public had a very robust and lengthy discussion. It focused on the issues of the building massing, the compatibility of the new addition with the existing neighborhood, the setback of the addition, and the need for a 3D rendering to view the development in context with both the existing church as well as the Tucker Drive neighborhood. Since that meeting, the applicant has reduced the building height by 6 feet. The area silhouetted in black is the original proposal that was last reviewed by the Planning Commission. The revised elevations are shown on the top. That's the elevation as seen from Tucker. Has dropped the elevation by 6 feet. So in total, that is 30 feet in height. I should note that the length of that addition is approximately, I believe, about 170 feet. So it's about 170 feet by 30 feet tall for that side of the proposed addition. The applicant has provided a round, I believe there are 5 or 6 different points of view of renderings. I'm just going to show 3 of them tonight. I know the applicant has boards in front of you to see the rest of them. This is an elevation a rendering of the addition as seen from Tucker Drive. This would be at the time of post-construction or immediately after construction. This shows the first round of landscaping that we put in. The next elevation shows the second round of landscaping and more mature trees growing. And that would be, and that third one shows the mature trees. Again, obviously it would take many years for this point to get to these trees of this size. This shows the addition looking from Tucker towards John R. This shows, again, this is the landscaping at the time of construction. As the landscaping matures, it would screen the addition from Tucker Drive. And again, that's at full construction, or full landscape build out. This last view is looking at the site from John R. across Tucker Drive into the proposed addition. Again, landscaping at time of construction, as it grows and matures, and then finally at mature growth of the landscape. Again, This would take years to get to this point of landscape screening. This is just another elevation looking directly across Tucker at the elevation. Again, this is with the landscaping grown in. There are a few outstanding items that are still for discussion tonight with the applicant as well as with the public. The first is the building length and the impact along Tucker. As I noted, the length of the building is approximately 178 feet. Coupled at a height of 30 feet may create an imposing structure along that northern property line. The Planning Commission has asked the applicant if there are alternatives to soften the visual length of that building. The applicant has provided additional landscaping from what last seen from the Planning Commission, as well as added some dormers to lighten the roof massing along that elevation. But we do note that a standard for special use approval is the compatibility with adjacent uses and the compatibility with the master plan. And again, a tenet of the master plan is the preservation of residential neighborhoods. It is.
It is compatible or is it not compatible?
Sir, there's time for public comment here in a second. We'll get to that in a second. The second item, the outstanding item, is the issue of a lighting plan and fixture sheets. The applicant did not provide a photometric plan as requested. And according to the applicant, the building addition will not have any exterior lighting other than wall sconces. However, that should be shown on the elevations and shown as through a photometric plan to see what they would look like and the potential impact of lighting, especially along the Tucker elevation. As the Planning Commission is well aware, there are 7 standards for review with a special use. The first is the compatibility with adjacent uses. The second is the compatibility with the master plan. The third is the traffic impact or the potential for traffic impacts as a result of the addition. The fourth is the impact on public services. The fifth is the compliance with zoning ordinance standards. The sixth is the impact on the overall environment. And the seventh is the special use approval specific requirements as noted in the zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission tonight is asked to look at those standards, consider those standards, take public testimony on those standards, and make a determination if those standards have been met, or if they have not been met, or thirdly, if there are additional conditions that should be necessary upon the application. If the Planning Commission does find that those standards have been met, the Planning Commission may approve the special use and preliminary site plan with the condition that the applicants provide a photometric plan for review as part of the final site plan approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Carlisle at this time? If there are no questions, then the applicant may come forward at this time and present the project with any additional changes that were made.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Tom Callas, K-A-L-A-S, and I represent the petitioner here this evening. My address is 31350 Telegraph Road, Suite 201, Bingham Farms, Michigan. It's been quite some time, actually, since I've been in the city of Troy on a project, and a lot of the faces have changed, but I'm glad to be here. I always get a nice feeling when I come in Troy and, you know, present the client's plan. So thank you again for placing us on the agenda for this evening. Mr. Carlisle laid out in great detail the plan that's here in front of you this evening. My client also submitted a detailed site plan submittal package that contains renderings, elevations, the actual site plan, landscape plan, additional plannings that will be provided. The summary provided by Mr. Carlisle is pretty accurate. A few things that I'd like to mention in proceeding with this proposal tonight is, you know, we were here, or the client, I should say, was here back in April of 2017 and July of 2017. At the time, you know, they started out with a different building, different elevations, different height. The initial height was 38.4 feet. And as Mr. Carlisle indicated, that was subsequently reduced and in fact now has been brought down to the 30 feet height to meet the ordinance requirement. So in essence, you have a building that's about 1.5 stories feet tall. The setback requirements for the R1C zoning for this particular type of use have been met. What the client also did is And it took us a while to get back in front of you because, you know, they put significant time and effort into these revised plans in an effort to get them approved. We went through all the Planning Commission minutes that we had copies of. We took into account the comments from the residents that were made at the 2 previous meetings and also from the Planning Commission members. And what we did is we revised the drawings and we submitted all those to you in your packet. Now, what I want to just point out a few differences because you pretty much have everything in front of you, and Mr. Carlisle did an excellent job of summarizing what we did. One of the initial and most important aspects, you can see it in your site plan submittal, is we took the building height, and the previous building, where the dormers are here, on the second story, had windows across. So in order to make the building more compatible with the surrounding residential and to give it that look of a residential building, we eliminated all the windows on the second floor, the second level, that are shown here where the 3 dormers have replaced them. So you can see by the 3D rendering, you know, that the building has changed. The elevation facing Tucker Avenue, which was a great concern to us and to the residents, has in fact changed to give it a softer look, a more pleasant look, in my opinion, you know, and a look that would be more aesthetically pleasing and more in line with the surrounding residential uses. Again, the building height was brought down. What we're proposing to do with this additional building, and again, I just want to stress that, you know, we're not asking for a different type of use. We're not asking to intensify an existing use. What we're proposing is a building addition that will provide for ancillary uses that will benefit the congregation and will benefit the church. Certain things such as a gymnasium with a basketball court, 13 additional classrooms for Sunday school. The congregation is growing, so we have to meet the demands of the congregation. There will be a multi-purpose room that will be included. A kitchen, which will basically contain equipment for warming, and all food will be prepared off-site, is what I'm told. So these additions are, you know, not going to intensify the use or not going to change the use. They're in essence ancillary to the existing religious use and to accommodate the congregation for certain things such as, you know, religious meetings, fellowships, church dances, things along that nature. So in taking into consideration the comments from the residents and the planning commissioners from the previous 2 meetings in 2017, we went back to the drawing board, and we feel wholeheartedly that by making these changes that we did, that it will be a plan and an addition that the city can be proud of, the residents can be proud of, and something that fits within that area. Now, we understand that you know, with the addition of this building, that the residents to the north along Tucker Avenue and to the east are concerned with the impact that this building will have. Well, as you can see from the landscape plans that were submitted, there is an existing 6-foot slope that goes from the north side of the building towards Tucker Avenue. That's going to be increased to 8 feet. The berm will be regraded. We have additional plantings consisting of at least 30 trees, arborvitaes and firs, that will be minimum 6 to 8 feet in height when planted. And as you can see from the 3D rendering, the 3 different looks that were shown, the first one was the initial planting. The second 3D rendering was after a certain amount of years, I believe it was 5 or 6 years. And the third rendering, which basically totally shields the addition from the view of the residents on Tucker to the north, was after 18 to 20 years, I believe, was a time period. So we believe with these additions to the site plan, significantly reducing the height of the building to meet the 30-foot requirement, No additional parking will be needed. We're within the setback requirements. There's a minimum 50-foot setback from the northern building line of the addition to Tucker Avenue. Then you have a 60-foot right-of-way with Tucker, and then I believe you have another 40 to 50 feet before you get to the residence to the north. So you're talking at least 150, 160 feet distance between the outer edge of what the addition will be to the residence on Tucker. And with the screening that we provided, of course, within a few years you'll have a good shield, and within several years you'll have total shield of that building. Not to belabor the point, but we feel that the use is already there. It's in a residential area. It's a parcel that is one legal parcel. We're merely asking for expansion of an existing use on the same parcel, and we feel that we've taken remedial measures to soften the building, make it more compatible with the surrounding residential, and provide enough screening to where it'll provide a certain comfort level to the residents to the north and to the east. With me here this evening also is the petitioner, the engineer, and the architect. To the extent you have any questions at all that you would like to ask or need additional information, we're here to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant at this time? Mr. Tagle.
Could you tell us a little bit more about how and when the additional classrooms will be used?
I have a representative from the church that can explain that for you.
Good evening. My name is Simeon Timbuk. I'm the senior pastor of the church. The classroom will be used for especially for the children, Sunday school classes, especially the morning services, Sunday morning services. And sometime during the week, we'll use them also for some musical instruction for the children.
Will they be run simultaneously with the church services for the adults?
In the morning, yes. And the Sunday school morning services, they'll be used simultaneously with the main church service.
The reason I'm asking the questions, I'm concerned about the parking. I know you're not increasing your sanctuary requirements for the parking, but you are adding classrooms which are going to require adults teaching or instructing the children, which I think needs to be considered. And I don't know if whether the engineer or the architect considered the additional parking requirements for the additional classrooms and with the current classrooms and how that works out as far as the number of cars you have right now.
The Sunday school teachers, we already have Sunday school classes in the actual building, and it will be the same Sunday school teacher or the same number of the Sunday school teacher. We're not going to increase the Sunday school teacher, I mean the adults. Our Sunday school is not for adults, it's only for the children. We don't have Sunday school for adults, only for the children. The children will come with their parents. Their parents will be in the main service, in the sanctuary, and the children will be in the Sunday school having their teaching, their instructions according to their age.
How many existing classrooms do you have today?
Today we have 10.
10. And
yes.
Are those classrooms going to be vacant then during the service?
Yes.
So you're building 13 new classrooms and you have 10 that are going to be vacant during the service?
Yeah, we will make them offices because we are short on offices, and we'll use them for other utilities we need, storage, and but will not be two different classrooms, because those classrooms we have right now, they are not satisfying our needs. They are small classrooms.
Can I ask a question?
And may I say something else also that it was not said? We were also asked to meet with our neighbors. So we met with our neighbors, invited all the adjacent neighbors, and we met and presented the plans, and our engineer was there present with us, answering questions, and we have, I think, a good time together for a couple of hours at our church location.
Thank you. When the calculations were submitted with this application, did they take into account additional parking for, over and above the sanctuary, but parking for the adults that will be in the 13 new classrooms.
Parking for churches is based solely on the sanctuary size, and so since they're not increasing the sanctuary size, they were not by this requirement required to increase the amount of parking.
From a practical standpoint, do we know what the situation, I mean, I've seen some photographs where cars are parking in not legal parking spaces, and I don't know when the photograph was taken. I don't know if it was a special day or a standard Sunday service.
Those are typically special events, occasionally.
So the photograph I saw was a special event?
Throughout the year. There's adequate parking to service the existing congregation on normal Sunday services, but for certain events such as Easter Sunday, Christmas, you know, you're going to have, as with every church,
right.
You're going to have additional people that show up, you know, so.
How many spaces are required with the sanctuary seating you have?
Whatever's provided on the site plan. I have the engineer here to answer those questions.
You have the file?
And I'm sure Mr. Carlisle has that information.
It should be in my original review.
Hi, my name is Art Kalajian. I'm the architect on the project. What was required was 179. What we have is 181. That's based on 6 lineal feet per car of the sanctuary. And sanctuary hasn't increased in size. I went over this with the planning director initially, and we felt because the ancillary areas will never be rented out to outsiders, that it's all inclusive within their own congregation. We more or less agreed that that would be satisfactory. Other than the occasional high season that we mentioned, it's adequate for the number of, and I don't think the congregation is at 100. You know, it's never used at full capacity most of the time.
Well, I understand that, but we all have to go by the book or the rules. And,
right.
And so you've got a 2-car access or extra 2 spaces based on the calculations for the capacity of the sanctuary. Is that, am I understanding that?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions for the applicant at this time? Mr. Sanzica.
I was just curious, the use of the gymnasium, is it just for the use of the your congregation, or will you be inviting other churches to compete basketball tournaments on the site? And I just wondered what's your idea for the use of the gymnasium?
What is called a gymnasium, in fact, it's a multi-purpose room. It's for our fellowship room and also for our youth. It's especially for our youth. During the week, we have youth meetings once a week, sometimes twice a week, and it's only for our youth, for our church.
I was just curious. You said you're going to have a kitchen for warming, and I wondered, will you be catering like for weddings and things like that?
We are not going to have weddings at our facility. We never had. What we do is our ladies, they prepare the food at home most of the time. We have, even now, our Thanksgiving meal. We have a Thanksgiving meal fellowship together. In that time, we have everything. It's filled with chairs and tables. We bring the food from our houses and we offer to the congregation, and we warm it up at the church.
So I guess you don't envision your gymnasium having tournaments there?
No.
With a number of schools or number of churches?
No.
Attending, and you don't envision having large weddings?
No.
Where the reception would be at the wedding, or with music and dancing and so forth?
No, we don't. I'm sorry. We don't dance.
You don't dance?
We dance. Yes, we don't dance.
Mr. Faison.
I had a question on the landscaping, and you know, the site currently doesn't have much landscaping remaining on the northern border.
Grass or grass, Jerry?
Sorry.
So my question is, what's your plan to maintain this proposed?
Well,
landscape?
we're installing an irrigation system, which the site currently doesn't have. And there's obviously going to be a large monetary investment made by the church with the landscaping. So every incentive is there to take care of it properly, maintain it, take care of the species so they're not dying, and to irrigate the site properly. So it's kind of an incentive is there due to the amount of money that's going to be spent. And of course, with the irrigation system, that's going to help because one currently does not exist.
Right, so you'll be maintaining this, you'll be investing more.
Correct. Well,
Landscaping and the maintenance of
right.
of this
And
landscape.
we'll have a separate third-party service for lawn cutting and all that stuff. So.
Then a question for maybe Mr. Carlisle. Is the landscaping plan, is that like a binding agreement that they have to maintain, or how do we monitor the maintenance of the landscaping into the future?
If this plan is approved, it would be binding. It's a condition of the site plan approval. Essentially, you're approving the landscape plan with this approval of the site plan and special use. The city has the right to obviously require them to replace trees that have died after the approval of this. In addition, the city will ensure that before the issuance of any certificate of occupancy, that the landscaping is installed as required by the landscape plan. If theirs is approved and they build the construction, and then 5 years down the road the trees are dying, the city does have the right to go in and require them to replace those trees because essentially is a condition of the approval.
So I'm going to piggyback on those comments. So
Follow-up, maybe.
according to Mr. Hudson, the existing church was constructed approximately 23 years ago. I've been involved in code enforcement for only 7 years. My understanding is that there was quite a significant amount of trees that were proposed and approved and required for that berm that have gone away. Without irrigation, it's possible, if planted correctly and if the correct species are planted and the applicant takes the effort to water, et cetera, that the trees can survive. But without irrigation, it becomes very difficult. So those trees, without irrigation, they did not survive, most of them, and that's an issue. Now, the code enforcement's doesn't drive around. There's 33,000 parcels in the city. Code enforcement doesn't drive around all day long counting trees and looking for dead trees. It's impossible for 2 full-time people to do that. Having said that, we respond to every citizen complaint. So if this were to be approved, I've heard that there's going to be irrigation that goes in, but let's say it's not working or it's not set up properly, et cetera, and those trees died, I'm confident that we'll get complaints from the neighbors, we'll investigate, and the petitioner will be required to replace every tree on that site. It's a contract, just like the building, the pavement, the dumpster, et cetera. It's all part of the contract.
So then the last question, so then based on the condition of the landscaping today, it would seem they're out of compliance with the contract of the original site plan.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Krent.
I got a question for you. During construction, will Tucker Avenue be utilized for any construction equipment or vehicles?
As a preface to that, any construction on the site, we obviously will have to meet your zoning ordinance relative to construction traffic and whatever is required. But as far as how the builder intends to utilize construction sites for this site, I'll let Mr. Tony Capuzzi here respond.
Tony Capuzzi with CMA Design Services. We were brought to the congregation as construction managers. We assisted in some of the design work with the architect. And as far as any scheduling of construction along Tucker, we would follow all the city ordinances and requirements. We're familiar with Troy. We're actually working with DPW right now doing some work in the back of the DPW yard. So we understand what's required, and we will follow all requirements and restore anything that's been removed, and that's our intentions.
The question was, will any construction equipment be on Tucker Avenue?
I don't feel there would be a need for it. That we might have to access Tucker to get onto the site, but there's nothing that would have to sit on Tucker.
No, I'm not saying set, but it would be through access. So you'd have construction trucks drive on Tucker?
It's either Tucker or John R. I'd have to access somewhere.
Because this is a special use. We can impose those kind of requirements. So.
Okay.
Thank you. I have a question for CMA Design Services. The renderings that you provided, this is the first time we actually see these renderings, they indicate that the windows from the gymnasium on the north side on Tucker actually open. Can you clarify if these are fixed pane or not? Because the renderings actually show that they do open.
I think that would be a question for the architect.
Sure.
If you're talking about the dormers, they're all fixed, and then the lower windows are not intended to be operable.
Okay.
They're all low-ease, special insulated glass, and in the building, fresh air is through the air conditioning systems and the rooftop units will provide all the required fresh air.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is because the renderings actually show that they are open.
I wasn't aware of that.
Open, and the floor plans provided actually do not indicate anything regarding those windows.
No, they weren't intended. I guess I must have missed that when I looked at it like that. But the intent is all fixed.
Okay, thank you.
And I think since I'm here, I like to address the lighting issue. The reason why I didn't give photometrics is there really isn't any lighting issue. There's only one recessed lighting at the front of the building and a soffit that's just a recessed light fixture that will just light up just 5 or 6 feet of the entranceway. The other 3 doors are means of egress that are in behind and not visible from any of the streets. They're going to be just emergency wall packs. That I brought a sample of it just to show the board. But if you had to have photometrics, but I really feel that it's really a moot point based on the type of fixture I have. It's if Brett could show the floor plan, I could point out where they are, where they occur. Let's say I buried my fixture, I think. But if I could get the floor plan of the building, I'll point out where the light fixtures occur. I don't know if you could see this, but this is a downlight, typical downlight for pathways and entryways. It just goes directly down to the area that immediately fronts that. And there's no lighting designed to light up the building from the exterior. I don't know if you could get the floor plan. It might be.
Brian, it's a very large file. So.
Hey. There we go. Okay, so this is the Tucker Road area here. This is where I'm talking about is the only visible light will be in a soffit right where that light is hitting. So there's really no spill out anywhere. This will be emergency light fixture for lighting right here. Then there'll be an exit way here, which is totally enclosed, as well as one here. Just these are means of egress exit ways. This will be utilized for trash or whatever, but it's not visible. This is your street side. There is a home here that's shielded, and what little light we have is incidental, really. So photometrically, it's not going to spill anywhere other than in the immediate area of the property. That's why I didn't provide anything there, because it seemed like it was a moot point. Hopefully that addresses that question that was brought up earlier.
Mr. Tagle.
You bring up a good point about trash. How is the trash collected now?
It's I don't know if there's a full site plan, but there is a enclosed dumpster on the site that's in the back side of the.
We have a dumpster that is enclosed in the parking lot. We have a fence surrounding it, and it's not visible from outside.
I don't know if you can see it, but it's located, this is the church here. It's located right in this corner here, away from any residences. Pretty far away, and it's shielded by the landscaping that's off of the main road there. John
So
R.
is it the intent of any trash generated in the kitchen or in the fellowship hall is going to end up in this dumpster? I mean, it's kind of like a very circuitous route to...
We are going to use the dumpster we have right now because there we have the access of the truck. We have a company that, like a GFL is called, that they come and pick up our trash. So there is the access for the truck for picking up the trash. We use the same.
Yeah. I'm looking, I mean, I don't even see a sidewalk connecting unless...
Right off the parking lot.
No, I'm looking at the exit out of the addition, out of where the kitchen is.
Yeah, there's a sidewalk that connects to the existing one, like through the courtyard.
You know, I see that, and then it turns to the south, and then it stops, and there's another square, probably pad out from a door, and then no sidewalk, then it picks up again. And then it goes across the front of the building.
Right, the sidewalk is continuous. It's not really, maybe I can show you on that.
For whatever reason, I can't, it's better than mine. That's the second house. It's two-sided.
Yeah, that's different than the plan. The plan we have shows no sidewalk here, and it's, and this sidewalk stops short of, and I don't know if that's a...
That might be because it's existing, maybe the planner, the North across the but it's there.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant at this time? Thank you.
Thank you. And I would just like to add, thank you for your time. This is a project that, obviously we believe in greatly. It was a project that was recommended for approval by the city planning department, and we would hope that we can get it approved tonight for preliminary site plan and special land use so that we can proceed to the next step. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carlisle.
I just want to be very clear that we did not recommend approval of this. We have not made a recommendation. We have laid out the issues for discussion with the Planning Commission. So I want to be on the record noting that the planning staff, my own report, did not make a recommendation of approval. It simply laid out the facts for the Planning Commission to make the judgment.
I believe I indicated the planning department, not the consultant.
Mr. Savana and I are the planning department, sir.
And just also for the record, there was a letter that was submitted. It's hard copies in front of you this evening from a resident. They're actually in the audience this evening that indicated that the planning director and the consultant recommends approval of the request. And I mean, the report's in front of you. We lay it out, and it's the decision that's to be made by the Planning Commission after applying the standards for special use approval. I just want to state that for the record.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Savana. Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. At this time, this is not a public information meeting, or this is not a public meeting, but we are opening it up for public comments for anybody in the audience that actually wishes to speak to this item. So, Mr. Savana, can we set the timer on this as we usually do to 3 minutes? 3 minutes. Yes. And we have a timer up here, and the green light stays on for 2 minutes. The yellow light comes on when there's 1 minute left, and we just ask that you please wrap up when the red light comes on. That's when your time is up. So anybody that wishes to speak that's in the audience, please come up and sign in on the sign-in sheet and introduce yourself. And if you are within the neighborhood, please state your relationship to this project that we have tonight. Thank you.
One second, Mr. Hauser.
Yeah,
just 1
let
second.
me just start signing my secret. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the public hearing was closed, correct?
So the public hearing actually occurred the first time we had this meeting for this project. Is that correct, Mr. Stavridis, if I recall correctly? So there was, the public hearing occurred 14 months ago. So this is not a public hearing, but we're giving the public an opportunity just to speak. Sure.
Mr. Hausner, before you speak, would you like the mouse? Or if you want to nod to me, I can, okay.
Tell me when I start.
So
right now.
So those of you that wish to speak, you don't have to stand in line. Just you can come up whenever the speaker is finished. That's up at the podium. So you can sign in when you come up to speak. Sure.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you to the Planning Commission. We've seen some of you before, and I appreciate Mr. Senzika, Mr. Tagle, and Mr. Krent for some of your great questions. I'm at 2071 Tucker, and I am a neighbor. I will be directly looking at this entertainment facility in front of my home. I just want to clarify some great questions from Mr. Fascion. The church has not been a good neighbor the last 18 years. All the landscaping has died. I've sent letters back in 2008, which was probably before your time. I've contacted the church. But just imagine you have a neighbor. You don't want to keep knocking on their door every time their grass is tall and their yard looks bad. That's what we have to look at. And now all the trees are dead, and it's very interesting. Mr. Edmonds actually went there last year, and if you look at your records, he reprimanded them and said they should be ashamed of the condition of the property. A year went by, and now all of a sudden the trees have finally been cut down. So I don't know, even if you went, unless you took them to court, you probably wouldn't even get them to do that if the landscaping died. But again, a year later. So I'm glad to see the landscaping, but I have doubts that it will survive. Next slide. This is what we're looking at today, our one lone tree that Mr. Fascion pointed out. Okay, the landscaping was part of the original plan. It's all gone. I shouldn't have to chase them. I asked them, do you ever come look at the back of your church? This is the back of their church. It's like an alley. If you look there, there's pallets, there's debris, there's junk behind the church right now today. Okay? For sure. You know, the yellow line is approximately where the landscaping and stuff will start changing, but there'll be basically zero green space. This is our neighborhood. Next slide. What I'd like to show you on this particular slide is the proposed addition is basically larger than the whole church. And what you see is there's 3 homes directly across from it. If you look at about a 2,400 square foot house, we're basically packing in the equivalent of 8 homes directly across from the 3. So we're building this 19,178, 880 feet, 30 foot high monster building in front of 3 homes. If you were to build there, you'd only be able to build 3 homes. So again, to me, I can't see how that can fit in the neighborhood. And then lastly, so that I don't run out of time, this is an entertainment facility. It's a gymnasium. Once it's built, our property values will go down, and who's going to be there to enforce whatever they do with it? There'll be 100, 150 feet. The noise will be there. We hear the church now when they're singing, right? But can you imagine when there's events 5 years from now leasing that out, even though we say we don't do that? And I just ask, is an entertainment facility, a stadium, surrounded in the middle of a residential area fit in the master plan? So I thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
By the way, that's an old image. Doesn't apply.
This is the one you want to use to advance it.
Good evening, Monica Hausner, 2071 Tucker Drive. I am overwhelmingly opposed to this addition. The revised plans are still not compatible and harmonious with the neighborhood. There's no change to the length or the setback of the building, creating this imposing structure right in front of our homes. Adding 3 decorative dormers does nothing to mitigate this massive structure. The building is still 5 to 10 feet higher than the average 2-story home. In addition, the architecture doesn't even match the church. How can such a large gymnasium be harmonious in our neighborhood? Look at the significant loss of green space. The proposed addition is not compatible with the city's master plan. to preserve residential neighborhoods and green space. There's basically no green space remaining on Tucker. The addition negatively changes the look and feel of our neighborhood. Look at the lights we have to see tonight. These lights are on sometimes all night. Look at the weeds that we have to deal with. The drawings that they're showing you here are just drawings. It's not going to be reality. Look at what we have been dealing with for the past 20 years. Sorry's not going to work anymore. We go talk to the priest. We get, I'm sorry. We've talked to him about the lights. I'm sorry. What about the safety concerns for the residents during the construction phase? Many of the children walk and ride their bikes down Tucker. Additionally, look at all of the drainage issues we have. Potholes in the spring and the summer. How are construction trucks going to be going in and accessing Tucker? Imagine the traffic backups. It could take me 10 to 15 minutes to get out of Tucker today because the traffic is so bad on John R. This is an email from a parishioner. They're afraid to speak due to retaliation, so I'll let you read that. So overall, look at the scorecard. Not compatible. Not compatible with the master plan or the adjacent uses. Impact to our public services. Pedestrian safety. Overall impact negative to the environment. So I'm proposing that we do not allow this addition to be built in our neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dear officer, my name is Man Chen, and we are the owner of 2043 Tucker Drive. Please bear with my accent and grammar issues because I'm not native, and I'm not that kind of public speaker guy, but I have to stand up here today because this will affect my life if this expansion happens. I'm concerned about our privacy because our house stands right in front of this church, and even with the current distance, we never open up our curtain, and because there's nothing between, the church and our house, and our bedroom windows is right in front of the church, so we have to keep the curtain shut all the time, and. Also, also we feel insecure if the expansion, if the facility comes this close to our house, we feel insecure and no privacy. Secondly, we're new here, but the lights from the church is already bothering when I'm asleep. I try to put films on my window, the tint, to make the window darker. But it doesn't work. The light still comes through. So I have to buy sunblock curtains to, try to keep those lights out at night. Last but not least, before we come here, we always believe that a church is about love and peace. But this is the first time I've seen a church project has brought so much trouble for the neighbors. So I don't understand why they keep pushing this if this is against our neighbors' will. So thank you for giving me this chance.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Brian Millidrag, and this is my wife Judy. We live at 5300 John R., third lot north of Tucker. So there's 3 houses facing Tucker, then there's a house facing John R. We're the third one. We're actually the last house before the new Mondrian development, which was another nightmare. We've been there for 30 years. We raised our family here. We've added on to our house. We've always followed the rules, never asked for a variation. It seems to me what is abundantly clear is that they've outgrown their congregation. And they did it a substantial period of time ago because they've appeared before this commission a number of times. I'm not quite sure what the number is, but it's 4 or 5 at least, asking for variances. And I agree with some of the other people here about the condition of the church, the trash gathered on the outside, that bright light that they were talking about, I can see shining into our bedroom window 3 lots away, our side bedroom window. That light's on all night. There have been 2-foot by 2-foot tiles, which they used to adorn the front of that church, broken off for a year at a time. The landscaping has been anemic, and now they're proposing this huge addition. My feeling is that it doesn't belong. It's not part of the neighborhood. We're a residential neighborhood. When I bought my house, I bought it because there was land, because there was a buffer between myself and my neighbors. Everybody, it's called Esther's John R. Acre Estates. They're all 1 acre or more. Same thing with going down Tucker. And we kind of had this church foisted on us. And now it wants to get bigger and a 2-story addition. I feel really bad for these folks who look right at it. At least I'm a couple houses away, but I don't feel like they take care of their property. And the landscaping is anemic, and it has been anemic the entire time that they've been there. And it genuinely pains me because I know people that go to this church. I have business associates that also go to this church. And I just don't feel like it's been taken care of or that they keep their promises. And so I would ask that you, some of the questions brought up here were very good. I felt like the answers were promises that have been not kept in the past and therefore will not be kept in the future. And there will not be a policing. Once they get their addition, then they got it. And nothing's going to happen to them. And so I ask you guys, please, don't put this down the throats of the residents of this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just like to add that I agree with my husband.
Can you sign in? And
My husband signed me in, but I can sign myself in too. I just wanted to add that I agree with my husband and others that have spoken here tonight. I think that if the congregation and the need of the congregation and the church has outgrown the existing property, I think a better solution would be to find another property that would be able to accommodate their needs and their growing congregation rather than the proposed plan. So we disagree with the plan being approved.
thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Samina Tyran. I come before you in a 2-fold capacity. One, as a proud resident of Troy for over 5 years now, and the second is as a member of the congregation. And yes, those are my children here. Lack of babysitting, but also I think it's important for them to see how a city government meeting is run. So we talked a lot about necessity and what we need, but I think it's important to think about what the church needs as well. And we do need classrooms for our children. We need a place. This is not an entertainment facility, contrary to what was been said. It's actually a necessity. It's a part of what our church needs in order to make our children feel comfortable, to make them feel engaged, and to be able to bring them somewhere where we can feel proud and honored that we have this beautiful place. And the city and the lot is nice and the street is nice, and I think we can make it even nicer. And you guys saw the pictures, and maybe there's some complaints, but I think we can all work together and get this going and provide something for our children where they can meet. You know, we want our youth to not be out doing drugs and to not be out partying, so let's let them come to the church and let's let them have a place where they can meet and facilitate this for them. Let's give our children and our young adults somewhere where they can, you know, meet rather than go to a party, rather than go out and do drugs. And I think this is very important and something that we want to encourage our children to do and our youth. And I think we need to set good examples and get along. And I think, you know, the church can go a little bit and the neighbors can go a little bit and we can meet halfway, and this can go, you know, and be something that we can all work together at, and, you know, not have the neighbors be upset, but also build something that we need for our families. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I have my own. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I live on 2097 Tucker. I've owned property in Troy since 1976. Okay, I've lived on Tucker. We built our home in 1980. Now, we went to the city. I wanted to build a garage on my property. I have almost an acre and a half of property. The city, as you know, had a lot of problems with people building these monolithic garages all over the city. Well, I went with my print, and the city said, nope, your mean height is too high. Scale it down. Your square footage is too large compared to the size of my home. Scale it down. I have an acre and a half of property, and the city still made me fit the requirements of the rest of the surrounding properties and buildings. Now, I don't feel that I was forced by the rules and regulations of the building department. I could have probably petitioned it, but I found out that after all the litigation that the city was involved in on the garage problems, that I was going to go nowhere. So I scaled everything back. I went to the mean height so that it would fit in to what the city requirements for my size of building, my matching a garage would fit. Now, I can't see that if I have to follow certain parameters for the size of property, for the size of the building I have, why are we going to let someone else build something that's the footprint is 5-6 times larger than what my footprint was going to be? And with my adequate property, I couldn't go property line to property line. I had to fit the requirements. So therefore, I feel that you can't let this go with such a big footprint and still force other people to follow the rules. And that's what I have to say about that.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Fadi Salem. We live in 2015 Tucker Drive. The first house as you enter Tucker, that's what we're going to be seeing, the monster that's going to be built, not to mention the traffic and everything else. A few things I wanted to mention, many things that they mentioned previously and touched on. Accuracy of the plan. There is no scale that tells you the specific plan and how it's going to affect in the view in the distant. So there is no accuracy there. The trees and the plan of them building trees. The trees, as they mentioned, they have not taken care of the landscape before. I don't think they have intention of doing it now. If they leave it to replace new plants, each plant is going to take 20 to 15 years to go to full height or full potential. if it dies, that's add another 5-10 years to reach its full potential. Not to mention the watering. The plant sits on a slope. The amount of water that they need to do, and that's all is going to be water running off into the Tucker Drive. You saw a picture of what happens in the wintertime. That's going to happen constantly throughout the year. Also, the basketball court. I can see why they need a basketball court, but the size of the basketball court, I don't think they want NBA players. It's a church. They want people that classrooms, not a basketball court that's pretty much the size of probably the entire church or the whole project. I don't see what's the point of having a basketball court that size with all these seatings and the size. That can be considered also and taken back. Parking and traffic. To get into the church itself, it's extremely narrow. Add more add more classrooms in the basketball court. Nobody can guarantee that this is going to be done for only the members. I know the members here, they have mentioned something that might be run for rented out or host basketball tournaments. That's something also to be considered. Is it for church use only and members? Can you guarantee this is what's going to happen? Or it's going to be used for additional revenue? Is that the church's purpose?
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Alian Turkas. I'm the owner of 2106 Tucker Drive property. I currently do not live there. I purchased this property a couple of months ago. I'm also a member of the church, and I would ask you to consider the construction of this. I do have 4 children, and one of them reason was for me to get closer to church, and I would like my kids to spend their time even in the gym. And I used to be a Sunday school teacher about 10 years ago, and while the congregation, the sanctuaries satisfies our needs, I can attest to the fact that our children grew and they need Sunday school. It's a need that we have. As a Tuckerette, I would like to move to Tucker in the future to be closer to church. I work in Troy, and I would ask you to consider voting for. It's a need that our congregation needs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bo Kai Jun. I live in 2043 Tucker Drive, and we have been living in this house for like 9 months, and we are right in front of the church. So, from our point, it's not enough privacy for us, and my girlfriend doesn't feel secure enough, and also there's not enough plant to block our views between the church and the house, and also the light in the night and it's too bright for us, so we have to tint our windows. And also, we have a big window on the second floor. So I have been in the church once, and I checked the window at the back of the building, and it can directly see my second floor. And it's the window is directly facing my second floor's bathroom. So that's my some of the concern. So I disagree about the project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jonathan Popp. I'm a resident of Troy and also one of the ministry directors at Bethesda Church. I lead the music ministry there, as well as with a couple of my colleagues. The ministry that I work with in particular deals primarily with kids starting from anywhere from 3rd to 4th grade all the way through any member of our church who plays a musical instrument. And so the ensembles that I work with specifically perform music on a weekly basis and during the church services. And we've heard a lot of qualms about the landscaping outside or different things, and those things can be addressed by those parties in charge. But I'm here to tell you that there's a big need for space enlargement in our congregation for activities such as rehearsals, and also, as you heard, Sundays during Sunday school activities. Now, during the weekly basis, to give you some hard numbers, the ministry that I work with in particular, we meet with over 90 people, and that's including students that we start off in our beginners band program, and then also the full-size symphonic band that we perform with on a weekly basis, which is around 40 to 50 members in that group. Now, these rehearsals occur on Thursdays and Fridays, and many times we have to share that space with the choir, who is also enlarged in size as well. And that is when we run in particularly into size of and the space, the usage of the space. Now, this is a multi-purpose facility, as you guys have heard. Maybe entertainment is not the right word for it, neither is purely a gym, calling it accurate. This is a multi-purpose in that it would be used for many activities such as teaching and educating our young church members in the Word of Christ, which is something we're all passionate about, as well as utilizing the space for our youth and a place for them to be engaged, as well as using it as a purpose for a musical rehearsal space and benefiting from the opportunity to have freedom to meet more openly for longer periods of time. As of right now, we're constricted in the space that we share for the times that we can meet. And to the neighbors who say that they can hear us singing, praise the Lord. But also, we never go past 9 o'clock in the evening with our musical instrument rehearsals. The choir does go slightly past 9 o'clock, but never to an hour that is past the point of acceptance. So that's I would like to just say and make my case that there's a big need because of the ministries that are running within the church to have more space. And whatever qualms are brought up, just know that the church itself is growing, and we have the need, and we need the facilities to be able to fully use all of the talents that the church has and currently is working with. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Tyran. I also reside in Troy at 3465 Fernley Drive. I'm also a member in the church, and that's my wife and kids over there. The main idea that I think our church in general, and I've been living in Troy for over 5 years and been a member at Bethesda Church since then. But the main idea here is improvement, just like I'm sure the Planning Commission is always looking to improve the city of Troy, and I'm always looking to improve myself. That's why I'm a U.S. Marine Corps veteran. I'm an engineer at GM now, and the community where I go outside of work is a place that I want to feel love, safety, and overall I wanted to see it grow. And I know that there's been some concerns for landscaping and possibly, not visually pleasing sites for the building, but I do think that overall we have done our best efforts to actually improve that and, in fact, make it better than it even looks now. Now, I'm not going to, claim to be an artist, so I'll let you guys make that decision. But I just wanted to point out that this improvement is greatly needed for our church. It's been needed for some time, and we've been trying to come here before the Planning Commission and do everything we needed so that we can move this forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, I live at 2088 Tucker Drive. I live right next to the church, east of it. My name is John Tosh. I've been to every one of these committee meetings and every one of the meetings you can think of when the church wanted to first plant themselves there, and every time they wanted to do something different. I'm going to go off script. You have a copy of my letter that I wrote, and I really apologize up front that I assume that you've already agreed to it, because the way the wording was written, it seemed like all you had to do was yay, and sign your name, and it was done. Okay, so that's what I figured was going on. A couple things I want to hit. Listening to some of this kind of stuff, the lighting is not going to get any better than I can see. Those two what do they call them, courts that are there are aisleways between the existing church and the new thing are going to have to be lit. They're just a thing for thieves or anybody that wants to cause some vandalism. They just can go in there and do anything they want. And that one particular one leads right to my bedroom window. That approximately 400 square foot kitchen is the size of a garage. Now, I don't know why they need something that large if all they're going to do is a little warming, but that leads off into that court or alleyway, and I know they'll have garbage stacked there because they do it now. You saw some pictures that are up there. The other thing that we really didn't, we hit it a little bit, but that contract about the original plantings that were supposed to be out there, Chris wrote a letter in 2008, 10 years after the church was built, and sent it to the church and the city, and no one responded to it whatsoever. I don't know, what were we supposed to do? Hire a lawyer? Maybe that's what we should have done. Based on what what we've seen so far of this church, I have no faith that they'll just give you verbiage and they'll do nothing about it. Right now, they're already violating rules. They use the attic above the classrooms, and they have a gathering room to do Sunday school. There's only one staircase that leads there. On those Sundays, when they got all that parking and a fire truck needs to get in there, I pray there won't be a bunch of kids stuffed up there trying to get down. So I get involved with this thing, okay? Based on their past behavior, we have no faith the church will maintain any of the landscaping that will grow to hide this massive 19,000 square foot addition. We call it an entertainment center because in fine print it shows 360 people plus. That's how many people that it will hold in that hall. We also ask you, if you live next door there, would you want that kind of entertainment center? And would you buy this structure, or buy it if this structure was 70 feet from your bedroom? There's nothing to stop the church from either renting it out, running a 7-day school, or even having weddings and everything else. Am I done? I'm sorry.
Thank you.
me a second.
Back up.
Do you want to use the remote, or do you want me to do it?
No.
I think it's up
here?
there. So it's the button to the right.
Okay. My name's Deb Tosh, live at 2088 Tucker. I'm not saying they don't need the space. I'm just saying that this is massive, 8+ homes based on the 2,300 square foot average of the 4 homes that abut to this, that are the 3 in front, and we're the ones right next door. It's putting a 10-pound bag of bricks into a 5-pound bag. It's way too big. Why meets minimum requirements enough? A 50-foot setback, our bedroom window is 30 feet from the west side of the church property. The proposed kitchen alley is right through to our bedroom window. I don't know if there's going to be venting. I don't know if I'm going to be able to open my windows in the spring or the summer. There's going to have to be lights, like my husband said. The setback requirements of this building should be higher. The building should be reduced in size to be harmonious with the surrounding properties. We received an anonymous email. I don't know if this is accurate, but I want to give you some history of this church. The church was approved. The church members started to build it. It wasn't a contracting, it was church members. A storm came in and blew all the framing down. Then the structure was built, but it was enlarged. I don't know if they ever came to the city, but what happened is they had to increase their parking because they increased the sanctuary. And instead of the trusses above the first floor, they ended up putting rooms up there. This is where this anonymous person said, I know it's hearsay, we can't prove it. This person also stated that they have plans on putting in a school using these facilities in the near future, bringing it to a full-time usage. This would impact negatively to the new neighbors that are on the east side with increased traffic and noise 6 days a week. This is a visual of their landscaping plan that I took. The squares, meaning those are plantings that do not exist today, were no evidence that they were even planted. The red dots are those plants that have died. Yes, the pastor sat at our kitchen window and they said, it's going to be beautiful, and they did nothing. So 47% of the landscaping contracted exists today. That's a horrible, horrible track record, and they say they're going to have. But past performance predicts future behavior. They're not good neighbors. If you do approve this today, I ask you that this landscaping plan is not sufficient. We should not have to wait 20 more years for landscaping to hide this monstrosity. Large mature trees should be required. They can be, these trees over here on the lower right are on, or lower left, are on the property along the new homes there to hide the church from there. You can put in 20-foot trees. And that's what I request that you do. But I say this is not harmonious, it is not compatible. Reduce the size of this to the actual needs, because I think what they're asking for is way too much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lydia Simpan. I'm a resident of Troy. I've been born and raised here. I moved out maybe for 6 years only, and we came back. And so I've seen Troy since it was lots of farmland, lots of sheep, horses. I don't know if anybody remembers that, up on Livernois. And I've got to see how it's developed through the years. Houses, subdivisions, and it's because Troy is a wonderful place to live. It's a wonderful place to raise your children. And I love that my church is so close. I am a resident and a member of our church here. And I taught Sunday school before I had children 10 years ago in that church. And so to address Mr. John Tagle, when you were asking about the classrooms, is it going to bring more students and whatever, I remember, because I'm a teacher by profession, I remember being in the classrooms and looking around and saying, there's no extra room to get the kids to do an activity besides sitting at the desk and doing seated learning. Anybody knows anything about teaching, with the principals, with your mentors, your professors, they always say you need to get all types of learning. So that means kinesthetic, touching activities. You really can't do all of that. You have to just sit at the table. My kids are growing. I would like for them to have a place where they can meet with their friends there. I have nieces and nephews that go to our church, and they're teenagers and they're like mid-20s. So their gatherings, they go, they fellowship, they hear a sermon, and then afterwards they hang out. They don't do anything like crazy where it's like loud music, or even like the basketball tournaments. That's usually done, like they'll go to Chicago for that, honestly. That's people that host that stuff. My sister, she has gone to the church a couple years in a row to try and help with the landscaping. She's I would say, semi-professional in that. So if the church is saying they're going to put irrigation, I can tell you it would help. So if the irrigation will be installed, it will maintain the life of the trees, the plants, and it's not going to be so hard to keep it up. So I just encourage you guys to give us a yes vote. And I am sorry for the neighbors that it's such a problem, and I hope we can go forward with a better relationship.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Romeo Pele. I'm the assistant pastor at Bethesda Church, and I'm one of the founding members of the Bethesda Church. And I would like to bring a couple things for clarification. There was no variation that was asked for, as one of the speakers have hinted that we asked for variation. There was none. We also we were listening to all the neighbors that were in the previous two sessions that voiced their concern, and we wanted to prove that we are good neighbors. As the senior pastor mentioned, we organized a meeting at our church location, and with cookies and all the love that we were able to display, we explained to them that we are going to listen to what they have to say, and we, as it was displayed on a screen, we lowered the height of the previous plan from 38 to 30, which is 8 feet in height, and 30, as far as I know, is the height of a two-story building. We also we will install a sprinkler system as according to the plans, which I have to say I agree that we did not do a good job with maintaining the trees and the landscaping in the north side of the property. But we do have a new team, of administrative team that is very proud in what they're doing. We did a lot of improvement. We just changed the roof of the building and other maintenance actions that we have done, and we can't wait to prove both to all of our neighbors and to the city of Troy, to the entire neighborhood, that we are good neighbors, and we will do an excellent job in putting a nice landscaping, and we will maintain it to be proud of. We also heard the complaints of too much lighting, and we eliminated on the revised prints the top row of windows from the multi-functioning building to eliminate some of the possible lights going through. We also we are going to install a dense natural obstruction wall of vegetation, trees, bushes, and all that, because we understand and we want to go the extra, not 1 mile, second, and 3 miles if it's necessary, to appease and to help our neighbors to see that we are good neighbors. And we ask you to approve this project because we really need it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Tom Callis again on behalf of the applicant. I just want to make a few clarification points. The addition is no wider than what currently exists there now with the existing church. It's 170, I believe 175 feet wide. I don't know, there's a visual being painted of being able to put numerous homes on that footprint. That's 170 feet is two 85-foot wide lots. I believe the city of Troy has minimum lot requirements for residential of that same size. That's two residential homes that we're talking about, 85-foot lots, two 85-foot lots. A lot of the issues that were raised by the residents, you will have the opportunity to actually remediate those with approval of the site plan. I heard concerns with landscaping. This site plan provides landscaping and it's binding, as your planner indicated. Once approved, we have to build what is there and what is approved, and it has to be maintained. There were issues raised or questions raised with respect to stormwater drainage and rain, and the new site plan has a stormwater detention basin. So, and the site plan, just so everyone knows, has to meet city ordinance requirements with respect to dimensions, with respect to engineering, and in addition must meet county road commission approval, must meet county drain commission approval. So there are all these different jurisdictions that will have a shot at that site plan and engineering plans to make sure that it meets the requirements not only of the city, but of various county departments. So approval of the site plan will allow for the screening that we heard is lacking. We'll make sure that the site is maintained. There will be an irrigation system. And as far as debris and storage of outside pallets, which may occur on occasion, the Planning Commission can impose a condition that prevents any outdoor storage of pallets or things of that nature. We're not opposed to that. As the client indicated, this is a use that is not intensifying the existing use. It's merely permitting amenities to the existing congregation, as some of the members indicated, to allow their children to have someplace to go, someplace to congregate, someplace to hang out with other children of their age. So with that being said, again, we would ask that the preliminary site plan and special land use are approved this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. No, sir. Anyone else wishes to speak? If not, we bring it back to the table for further discussion. Mr. Senzika.
I was just curious, could you go over your sequence of construction and how you will provide safety for the residents along Tucker Road and the traffic controls? For example, are you going to be fencing in the site?
Absolutely. We can fence the area off with temporary fencing. Again, we'll meet all city ordinances for safety and whatever requires to secure the site.
Where do you anticipate the construction traffic that will enter the site?
Well, there's not a lot of site work to be done. I mean, primarily it's all building that's really being...
You'll be having deliveries,
There'll be deliveries, there'll be a staging area, and we could possibly do that, most of that area, along John R. in front of the building. There's a footprint there, an area that we can prepare our site for, and again, if I do have to access Tucker, we will put that back, whatever requires to put it back and follow the print.
So do you anticipate any traffic on Tucker? Quite routinely?
I don't understand. What do you mean by traffic?
Construction traffic, deliveries.
The building originally was proposed as a wood structure to match the existing. Because of the height restrictions and everything that's been imposed on this, that's kind of why we were brought in. We actually do a lot of steel buildings, and it'll be a quicker construction, lighter, so the components are smaller and compact, and there'll be a day where we'll have semi deliveries. It'll pull up, we'll have the crane pick it up, and the structure will be up. Does that answer that?
So right now, there's no approach on Tucker. Are you building an approach? Are you putting in a culvert? What's your strategy there to create that approach?
We would probably work with engineering. They would probably require us to put a temporary drive-in, whether it be with riprap or some kind of stone that we would temporarily place, then remove, and then restore as it was before.
Okay, I think you've seen that some of the photos actually show the existing conditions. Now there's some significant drainage issues and deficiencies there. So putting in any kind of riprap, putting in any kind of culvert there would definitely deteriorate those conditions and block some of that drainage. So what are you planning to actually create any improvements after you leave and pull out that culvert?
Are you asking, will we improve Tucker from where it's at now?
Not Tucker, the actual drainage that's there. I mean, what you're doing there is if you're putting in an access point.
We would do whatever engineering require us to do, absolutely.
What's your anticipated construction schedule?
A project of this size, probably 180 days. I'd like to do it quicker and faster. I would assume the client would like to have it done quicker, but typically it's about a 180-day cycle from the time I hand someone the key.
Mr. Tagle.
Yeah, this is a little bit out of our purview as far as construction, but I'm sure you're going to be using Tucker to fly in whatever trusses or steel or however you're going to be framing this thing. You're not going to be driving over that berm with a steel truck or with a truck loaded with trusses, I would assume. I mean, that's a 6-foot berm right now.
Again, the structure, what they're proposing right now is a steel structure. So they've lightened the system.
Yeah, but my point is, you're not going to carry the steel from the road to where it's going to get bolted down. You're going to be flying that stuff in. And I think some of the concern you're hearing is Tucker is not that wide of a street to begin with, and when you're having a crane on that street, you know, sitting there flying in pieces of equipment, there's a safety consideration as well. And I guess what I'm not hearing is really the questions that we're asking. You know, I'm not really hearing a specific answer as, and maybe you haven't thought down the road that far. However, this is a very constrained site, yes. And for you to be stockpiling materials in the right-of-way of John R., you know, I don't know where you're going to stockpile them, quite honestly.
Well, okay, in fact, let me explain. Again, what we're proposing is a pre-engineered building. And typically these buildings show up in, a building this size will probably have, you know, several truckloads of steel in pieces. And typically we'll either use a boom truck or a crane that'll be moved on site. And as if I had to visualize it right now, I'd probably start on the east end, start assembling it towards John R., and then all the components are onto the building.
So, well, you make it sound so easy.
Well, I'm trying to simplify it, but yeah, I mean, I do need some staging area, and I believe there is plenty of staging area in front of John R. No crane on Tucker. I don't see how. Actually, I wouldn't be able to reach the site from Tucker with a crane.
It's your closest point, unless you go on the property.
Well, I would be working off the property, absolutely. Okay. I guess what I'm trying to portray is that we're not restricted to the point where I need Tucker to construct this.
Do you have a plan B for another access point if it's not Tucker?
John R. and then, or from the parking lot if we had to. But again, it would be probably simply, you know, done from John R.
John R. on the corner with Tucker?
Yes.
So John R. is scheduled for widening for 2019, 14-month schedule of widening to 3 lanes. So that entire road is actually going to be closed southbound for a year, for a full year 2019, only northbound open. So any kind of staging on that corner would almost be prohibitive to doing anything there because of the restrictive traffic flow. So that's just one thing.
Well, again, these are issues that this is what our office does. We work out through the issues and timing and staging and.
I mean, the access would be, as indicated, off John R. and Long Lake. If the concern is keeping all construction traffic off Tucker, then you can impose that condition.
Yeah, Mr. Savana.
Construction access is determined by the city engineer, period. Not by planning commission, not by the applicant, it's by the city engineer. Construction access, I've heard a lot of residents concerned about the potential impact of construction access. I'd be concerned too if I lived on Tucker, understood. But ultimately, it's not the purview of the planning commission to make this determination. This is made by the city engineer after weighing all the information, including some that we don't even know about, overhead lines, utilities, the berm, et cetera, et cetera. This is a decision that should be made by the city engineer.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies it.
We
So
agree.
we can leave that topic to the city engineer to resolve. Mr. Tagle.
I have a question for you guys, and I don't know if you can answer it or if engineering gave you any insight. The berm itself, it does drain into the right-of-way right now, which is a little bit of an unusual situation, and I don't know how much that's exacerbated the ponding we see in Tucker. Can you guys shed any light on this? Because what I've heard tonight is that berm is going to increase in height. I don't know what that means to the slope of the berm and the runoff and all of that, but any insight as to why that berm was even initially created?
I don't know. This is before my time, but having said that, if there are drainage issues that are being caused by that berm that are impacting Tucker, now is the chance, because I'm not an engineer. Right. My guess is that there may be, at some point, there may be access from Tucker for this project. I don't know. Again, I'm not an engineer, but with going from a 6-foot berm to an 8-foot berm, now is a chance to fix any drainage problems that are involved Tucker. The time is now. So that'll be a consideration of that their civil engineer is going to have to address. He's in attendance this evening, listening, and now's the chance to get it right.
Well, and again, but that's an engineering question.
That's correct.
I was just trying, if you had any background, because it's an unusual, very unusual situation that the city would allow water to come off private property into their right-of-way.
Definitely, and I saw the pictures as well. I mean, again, now's the chance to rectify that issue.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any other comments at this point? Further discussion on this? Yeah, Ms. Cooper.
I missed the April 25th, whatever meeting. There was a public hearing. I think it was 2017. But I noticed that there are notes that there was a suggestion or discussion on flipping the addition to the other side of the church. This is a beautiful church. I drive by it often. That big, massive, rectangular structure is not that attractive. And I mean, we can't, I don't want to say anything, but why didn't you think of designing it and flipping it so that it was on the other side so it wouldn't bother the residential neighbors as much?
I believe, and Mr. Capuzzi can add to it, but I believe they did look at that, and the site has floodplain. We're restricted by its configuration, as you can see, existing parking lot, where we plan on putting the detention basin, and it just made sense at the time with the screening that we were providing and the fact that the width of the building was not going to exceed the width of the existing church, and it seemed like it just fit better back there where we are proposing to build it. And go ahead if you have anything to add.
From the information that I received again, we met with the neighbors, and I spent time with the architect, and this has been a 2-year process, maybe even more, and they've exercised all those. They went through those exercises, and here's where they ended up. I believe some of the engineering is already completed from Norwick and Fraus, who was hired to look at the drainage issues, and this is the best scenario and the best answer.
If I may add something.
Sure.
Okay, if I may. We explored the situation to build on the south part of the actual building. The situation is that there is a flood area. Secondary, it's a wetland area. And thirdly, we have to take some of the parking spaces we have over there, and in that case, we have to relocate them on the northern side of the actual building. And we think that relocating parking lot in that area would create more harm to our neighbors than the actual building, which doesn't have any access to the Tucker, and will be better.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Yeah, Mr.
One more
Stegall.
question. How many are in the congregation?
Excuse me?
How many members do you have in your congregation?
We have about 500.
500. How many services do you have on a weekend?
We have a Sunday morning service, 9:30 to 12 o'clock, and Sunday evening service, 6 to 7:30 p.m. Also midweek service, 7 p.m. to 8:45, mostly 9 o'clock. And that's Wednesday evening. We have a prayer evening, Tuesday evening, 7 to 8:30. And also on Friday, Thursday have the beginners in the music, and also Friday, the choir.
So you have
And the
a
youth.
congregation of about 500. You have a morning service and an evening service
Yes.
on Sunday. Are those services like the people that come in the morning, do they come in the evening as well?
Yes, most of them, yes.
So typically, you'll see the congregation coming to one or both of the services.
Right.
You talk about the need for growth.
Right.
Certainly the sanctuary is a key component to accommodate growth, but also as we're talking about children's programs as
Yes.
well. If you add these additional classrooms for the children, will your limiting factor then be your sanctuary capacity? I mean, I don't know what your sanctuary seats right now.
It sits about with the choir and the band, everything. It sits over 500 right now.
Somewhere
Yeah.
in that
Yes.
500 plus. So
Oh,
really, I mean, I guess you've looked at this, because the growth model to me seems like there could be some issues here, because if you're almost at capacity in your sanctuary, but you're increasing your children's area, now your limiting factor is going to be your families or the capacity in your sanctuary.
Yeah, with the balcony, we can accommodate even more. We have also
There's a balcony in the sanctuary?
Yes, in the sanctuary. Yes, and the big room that it's a concern for our neighbors, the gym, that we want is so big. If it's viewed as big, is not so much for the basketball, playing. Is more for the fellowship. We are a close community. Our family lives together. This is our motto. The place where family live together. So we are together. Our youth, our children, the families. We want to be close together, to grow together, to fellowship together. We have Romanian Americans. We have Iraqi Americans. We have Chinese Americans. Mostly they are Romanian Americans or now Americans.
Okay, thanks.
If I could piggyback on what, especially when it comes to the children, I'm the pastor of education and I kind of oversee all the children and youth activities. As one of our Sunday school teachers mentioned here, the Sunday school classrooms are very small. Actually, were initially proposed to be like office space or storage space. So we have the largest room is like 12 by 20, and indeed they're kind of cramped. It is the same children that we have, but the 8 additional Sunday school classroom that we propose to build comes to answer the need for space, so they will not be cramped. So even the teacher too can to teach with additional space for different activities. But it's the same children that are being served now in small classrooms that we want to convert into office and storage.
Okay, but that helps, because I heard several people say we need this because we're growing. We want to see growth in the church, and to me that means head count.
We have
That doesn't
been
mean make more
plateauing for
room.
the last 3 years now. We are about the same. It's just the children are coming and they are graduating, but it's about 150 kids that are being cramped in those small classrooms.
So it's not really growth, it's you're trying to better accommodate.
We've been kind of plateauing lately, but we need the space, and that was the main purpose, was to answer the need to invest in the new generation. We want to keep them off the street. We want to teach them good morals, but we need that space, keep them off the corner of the street, the drugs and all that, and to create and raise good citizens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts, comments at this time, Mr. Krent?
First of all, I want to encourage this church to grow and to prosper in the city. I think your premise is wonderful. I just want to do everything to encourage you. That said, I think imposing this large structure so close to your neighbors is not something I would vote for. I would much rather see, if you want to expand and grow, to do it on the south side of your existing building. I think there can be ways through drainage mitigation. I realize you're in a floodplain. Virtually the whole property is in a floodplain. It's not. I was looking at the drawings. I realize it's a 1% over 100 years, and there's another little small area that has a higher flood area. But I think through proper, and I'm not a drainage expert. We have one on our panel, but I'm sure it would take the City of Troy's engineering department to review this entire thing to see if it can be done. I'd like to see that explored before I'd vote yes.
So Mr. Salvi, Mr. Carlisle, I think two of the issues, the prominent issues that kind of raised to the surface this evening, especially from the residents, were the issue of landscaping and the time of that landscaping to mature. And one issue that kind of came up to the surface also was the lighting issue, the existing lighting issue and the concern of future lighting. Are there any special conditions that we can impose to mitigate those two issues in terms of landscaping that is more mature at the time of completion, or mitigating any kind of lighting treatments, any kind of window treatments to mitigate the lighting issue that the neighbors are concerned about?
So this is special use approval, and we've heard the concerns of the neighbors related to landscaping. So related to landscaping, the Planning Commission could impose a condition that the plants be planted larger than proposed. With regards to lighting, it seems based on the photos that are provided, there's some existing lighting that shines all night long. The Planning Commission could certainly, as part of special use approval, address the existing situation, which negatively impacts the neighbors, by requiring those lights to either be put on timers or to physically be turned off, at a certain time of night. Those are both conditions that could be addressed as part of the approval process.
Okay, thank you. Any thoughts, comments on the lighting issue and the landscape issue that was raised by the neighbors? To get consensus on what direction we want to head with this prior to any kind of motion.
Motion sensors now.
Mr. Tagle.
Yeah, I applaud the efforts to try to reduce the scale of this building, but I don't know that it has been successful. It's still 180 feet long, and I can't quite tell from the drawings how many more feet, maybe 100 feet closer to the residents across the street. The landscaping, the intent is a good intent, but when I look at the renderings that show the variations of, day one or year one and year 5 and year 20 or whatever it is, they're really not realistic. It's very hard for us as commissioners to think that when I look at the 20-year plan, that's really what it's going to look like. There's, there's so many factors that go into that are out of our control. So I'm very concerned that landscaping may be part of the answer, but maybe not the whole answer. I've been thinking about what else could be used. We've often used screen walls to help visually block the elements to the adjacent property. So that may be an opportunity to, and I'm not just talking about a 178-foot straight wall. I mean, there are ways that we could, or that the petitioner could design a wall out of brick masonry, out of a different shaped wall. Maybe it undulates. Maybe there's areas that come in and out. But I just think that relying upon the landscaping isn't going to be an ultimate answer. And quite honestly, again, this is a big building in a residential neighborhood. So I'm still concerned about that. Also, something was brought up and about noise. And until I learned a little bit more about what kind of activities go on inside the building, for example, if there are band rehearsals or choir rehearsals going up until 9 o'clock at night. I mean, if those activities are heard now at the distance the existing building is from the current residence, it's going to be all that much greater noise moving them closer to the residence. So I've got some concerns about the noise issue. So I guess I'm really conflicted about this. I don't think the building fits well. I mean, I have to agree with Ms. Koopa. I am not a fan of the architecture. And again, I had comments from our previous meeting about that, so I won't go into that. But I really am not sure right now which way I'm going to go on this thing with what I'm seeing in front of me.
Commissioner Tagle, can I respond to that? I'm kind of, I spent some time with our draftsman in our office as far as the trees, and I believe there's an architect that was hired, a landscape architect, and those documents were followed to those species and sizes. So as far as the drawings go, they're accurate to the following of those documents from the architect.
Let me suggest you take a computer and look at the drawings and go from year 1 to year 2 or to year 5 to year 20. And as you progress into the later years, all of a sudden there's a new tree that wasn't there before. So what I'm saying is it's not realistic. Today there's nothing here. In 5 years there's a tree there. So my point was, this is an artist's rendition, and if we're kind of putting all our eggs in the landscape basket to solve this visual scale issue or blocking, I'm saying I'm concerned that, it may not be the best way to go about this as far as understanding what is that landscape really going to accomplish in some number of years.
A question for CMA. You mentioned that the structure is prefab. How wide are the exterior walls, and what are you proposing to mitigate the acoustic issues that have been raised in terms of sound attenuation, especially on the north and especially on the east side?
Well, actually, that would be a question to the architect, but when we were brought in to look at this structure, it was due to the original proposal. As you can see, the building, I mean, they've made, again, I was brought in after the fact, and they brought the building down, I think, tremendously from that wood structure to this steel structure. In fact, I remember having a conversation with Brent. A couple more inches, you can't use the building anymore for that basketball, volleyball area. As far as what insulation materials are going to be used and acoustical, I would have to pass that along there.
Because it's a pre-engineered building, we're going to specify our minimum 38 for, just like our house would have to be required. So that in itself will have sound and as well as insulation value. In addition to that, we're going to put a hard surface on top of the ceiling and have shingled roof, which would be less noisy than a pre-engineered metal tin roof type of structure. So basically we're using the pre-engineered system as a structural element only, but it's going to be clothed in to look more residential with the shingle roof. It'll have a layer of hard surface as well before it hits the metal deck. It'll have more than what's required for code for insulation. Plus we're going to mask the inside to emulate the wood with another layer of sheathing, so the the ultimate skin of the structure, as well as the vertical. We're going to have the brick walls. We're going to have that with 8-inch metal studs with insulation. We're going to have barriers with drywall. So it's going to be a very well acoustical building. Plus the windows are non-operable. We'll have a U factor of at least U 3.5, which meets or exceeds the thermal barrier as well, which will meet the sound barrier as well. So it's with the elimination of the clerestory windows, it's going to be a lot more quieter than one of the concerns we had initially. So I think overall, it's not like a pre-engineered building that's typical. It's going to be conventional looking, but pre-engineered superstructure. It's going to be very well insulated beyond what's acceptable for this type of building.
So one of the concerns that was brought up at the last meeting was, again, the acoustical issue on the north and the east side. And is this structure being proposed with dual pane or triple pane windows?
It'll be triple pane, low E energy, and the actual U factor will be based on the manufacturer, but it'll be more than meets the requirements.
So all windows, including the dormers,
yes,
on the north and the east,
right,
at least will be triple pane.
Yes, very well insulated, and no because it's fixed, it's not going to have leakage of sound. We'll make sure it's caulked, as well as acoustical caulk on the inside as well, because of the concerns. So we could introduce whatever barriers that will enhance it to make sure that the sound does not go through.
All right, thank you. Ms. Koopa.
You know, the church is so aspirational as it is. It's big and it's beautiful, and then I feel like we're sticking this big rectangular block with windows, and you don't get to see the church anymore. A church is a house of worship. It's aspirational. That block and that massing of it just... I really am happy that the church is growing and is outgrowing the space it has. It's wonderful, but that's my biggest issue, is that. So I'm just leave that on the table.
And again, the idea was to make it compatible with the surrounding residential uses. And keep in mind also, in designing the site and building, there's cost limitations. We're dealing with a church here. We don't have an open checkbook. And so those considerations are also taken into, or those factors are also taken into consideration.
I'd like to add what I went through for the design. I don't know if you could pull out one of the renderings, maybe without the trees. What I did is I dropped the eave height down to 12 feet, which matches the existing structure. That was one of the first things I did. Before it had a stepped building like that first rendering showed. We eliminated that, so it's going to be mimicking the existing church, same brick, same elevations of the classrooms, but what you try to do is achieve a residential characteristic by adding, if you see the front dormer and the side, the front portion of it, that dormer is mimicking there to give it a consistency of the design, as well as bringing down the scale of the lighting, and the roof line is really starts at a 12-foot and then climbs up, so it almost emulates a large one-story structure. The dormers represent the two-story structures that matches the two-story in the front, but the massing is now more conducive to the existing sanctuary, which is a lot of roof. Same shingles, so it'll match beautifully, I feel. The brick is going to match, but in order to make it more exciting, the lighter color you see on top, which would be more towards a beige color than pure white, will give it a interest in design rather than having one monolithic wall of material. So I think the interplay of the two different materials plus continuation of the mimicking of the circular head that represents the dormers as well as the front of the building brings the whole scale down and makes it more interesting. Plus it's set back quite a distance. I think it's at least 40 feet inward from the sanctuary, so the front of the church is still going to be very visible. This is just pasting it to the side of the church, and I think it's more interesting than the original one because you do have this interplay of material as well as matching the brick. So the intent was to match the existing church so it looks like it's part of the original design with the same type of brick, same shingles, give it some characteristic with the dormers and bring the scale of it down so the whole scale went down to a 12-foot eave throughout the thing. The only thing that's elevated is the very front of the church, which is away from the neighbors as much as possible. That's the only place where it's actually a two-story structure. So that was the thought behind that, but I feel like it's going to blend in because of the materials being the same. It's not a pre-engineered building per se, visually, and eventually with the landscaping, I think it's going to be awesome structure. It's 50 feet away from the property line, not from the road right away, and I would say as an architect, I would not want to have a wall as another buffer. To me, a landscape buffer is a lot better than any other structure, because now you can have two walls, and that wall will be closer to the residents, which I think if I was a neighbor there, I would rather have a lot of trees in front of me rather than a wall. So I feel like heavily landscaping it was the best solution. And I think as long as we impose a scenario that would guarantee that, it's going to be a win-win ultimately. You're not even going to see the building ultimately in several years, but if we go from a 6 to 8 foot to a 12 to 14 foot tree, half that height of that building is going to disappear at the planting. And I think that's a lot. I've done a lot of churches in the area, and I think this will blend in nicely and eventually not even be noticed. So hopefully that helps out, but I don't know.
Any further discussion, or anyone want to make a resolution? Move one of the resolutions.
I'll read one.
Mr. Krent.
Resolved that special use approval and preliminary site plan approval for the proposed Bethesda Romanian Pentecostal Church addition, north side of Long Lake Road, east of John R., south of Tucker, 2075 East Long Lake, Section 12, currently zoned R1C, one family residential district, be denied for the following reasons. Building massing is inconsistent with the character of the adjacent properties and surrounding area. A tenet of the master plan is the protection of single-family neighborhoods. The proposed addition is not compatible with the existing homes on Tucker. The applicant has a history of not adequately maintaining landscaping buffer along Tucker Street. The proposed addition unreasonably impacts the quality of the neighborhood on Tucker Street in comparison to the impacts associated with typical permitted uses.
Moved by Mr. Krent. Can I get a second? Second by Mr. Tagle. Roll call, Ms. Sarnicki, please.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
No, I think this church has substantially cured all our prior objections. I think some of these objections are fantasy, and I emphatically vote no.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Ms. Krupa?
Yes.
Mr. Zanzika?
No.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Abhidian?
No. Motion fails.
You have
Motion.
4 yes.
4 yes.
And 3 no's.
So motion fails.
No, motion passes.
You need 5 to pass. You need 5.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I see. Okay, I understand.
So motion fails. Is that a failed motion to deny? That means further discussion, or are we just...
Someone can make a new motion. We're seeking approval of the preliminary site plan.
With all due respect, we have a staff attorney here, right here, who can assist us.
I'm sorry. I didn't see that.
We can move another motion forward.
Mr. Sanzika.
Will this be moving forward to the city council?
No.
No, this is not a recommendation.
So at this point, we got a 4-3 to deny, which motion fails. The only way we can take another vote is if somebody brings another motion to the table, and that's to approve? Or Postpone? That would be the only other two options we have at this point. Postpone with reason and conditions. Mr. Faison.
Just a question. So, Mr. Krent mentioned earlier, and I think even in an earlier session, is there an alternate spot on the site where we can place the building? We know it's difficult, but...
Yes,
We'll let the applicants.
we looked at all possible options with cost in mind also. This is really the only viable option, both physically and economically, for the applicant.
Physically and economically?
Yes, so this is what we are proposing to be approved or denied or approved with conditions, that we discussed earlier, but the site plan will not change as far as layout of the structures.
Okay.
You have to just understand that
Well, no, I get it.
it's been a long process. We've thoroughly analyzed the architect, the engineers, have looked at site conditions, floodplains, mitigation, DEQ requirements, cost involved, and this is really the only viable layout that they can afford to do. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Krent.
Just a question for staff. Is cost ever one of our determining factors for a site plan?
It's really not at the purview of the Planning Commission to...
That's what I thought. Thank you.
So we have two options here: to make a motion to postpone or make a motion to approve. Those are only two options at this point.
Well, it appears to me, and I think everybody else, that if we made a motion to approve, it's going to fail by the same margin that the prior one did. Maybe, if it'll be of any sense, postpone it, but I'm not sure.
If we make a motion to postpone, there has to be reason to postpone and conditions or requests of the applicant to make modifications or changes. That would be the only reason to postpone. Is that right, Ms. Dupree?
Mr. Crane, we're missing people on the Planning Commission. Ms. Cruz is not here.
We gave them the opportunity at the beginning of the meeting to not go forward. They knew that ahead of time. That's not a reason, that at this point, that's not a reason to postpone.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Are there two planning commissioners missing, or?
So currently, there's one vacancy.
Okay.
And that planning commissioner, that position has not been filled yet. And then there's a planning commissioner that's absent.
Because I just see the one nameplate, so I wasn't sure.
That's why at the beginning of the meeting, you were given the option to postpone the meeting because of the 5-2 condition, the requirement to actually require a 5-2 majority in this case.
And the client is willing to increase the size of the trees if that's a condition, if that gives you a comfort level.
So at this point, any changes that the applicant is willing to make would require a motion to postpone from one of the commissioners and to allow the applicant to make any modifications that would allow them to bring the application back in a future date with any kind of modifications.
Yeah.
Mr. Salvador.
I cover the microphone so I could...
Oh, sorry.
The only reason I would give to postpone would be to give the applicant adequate time to do a more rigorous research as far as locating the building on the south side of the existing church.
I would like to suggest that at the prior meeting that was discussed at some length, and I thought we had an understanding that it was just not going to be able to work on this site.
I think we heard from the applicant's attorney tonight, again, confirmation that that is not an option. The applicant is not willing to consider locating that facility on the south side because of various restrictions topographically and the access point, and that just is not an option for them at this time. So I think we've heard that from them. So
good enough.
Mr. Sanzica.
Well, I'm going to like to discuss the postponement. I think the two issues are, one, the landscaping, any type of screening walls or any type of other additions that could be added to protect the neighbors to the north and to the east, and also the issues of lighting, putting the timing of other proposals that they may suggest. So with that in mind, I'd like to make a motion that we postpone the subject resolution subject to the review and modifications of the proposed landscaping and the lighting.
The lighting was addressed.
As far as the timing of the lighting goes, the lighting of the existing building.
I think the city has an ordinance that requires sensors, lighting sensors.
That's part of a new code for.
So, excuse me. There is a requirement for a photometric plan that was not submitted. We've asked for that at 3 previous meetings. Mr. Collegian does not have the right to simply say it's a moot point that doesn't need to be addressed. We've asked for a photometric plan, and that should be submitted. In addition, there is concern raised by the neighbors across the street about light being emitted, interior lights, from the clear story and from the dormers, etc. So that should also be considered as part of the lighting. So again, there is a requirement to submit a photometric plan. Regardless of whether or not you think there needs to be one or not, that is an ordinance requirement that needs to be complied with.
Okay. Mr. Sabana.
Mr. Chairman, I'm in no way trying to take control of this meeting. However, the applicants had a chance to present. The applicant also commented during the public comment section. And we're having a little bit of a dialogue here. I believe this is a dialogue between the Planning Commission and not the Planning Commission and the petitioner. So again, I'm not telling you how to chair the meeting, but I would suggest that it would be helpful to the Planning Commission if the applicant were to sit down right now.
Sure, thank you. So back to the motion made by Mr. Sanzica. I think
Do I have to read the result again, or?
We can do that, but I think prior to making this motion, I think it would be beneficial if we actually get some kind of agreement from the applicant that they're willing to actually consider these two for postponement, right? I mean, because if they are, then the motion, we can move forward with taking a vote on the motion. If they're not willing to consider any of the items listed on the for reason for postponement, then maybe the motion is invalid, or there's no reason to move forward. Is that fair? Is that a fair point to request? Let's do this. Mr. Sanzica, make the motion with the reasons for postponing, and then we can ask the applicant after we get a second. Can we do that after we get a second? We can ask Ms. Dupree.
That's kind of unusual. I'm not sure we've ever asked the applicant whether or not they're willing to do something that we're requiring them to do.
Okay,
so
then we can just make the motion and...
I'm not sure that's necessary to ask them if they're going to do it. I mean, we're requiring them to do it, especially the photometric plan and addressing the landscaping issue.
Right. I'm just saying that the other issues, in order to postpone the meeting, we should have a reason to have another meeting.
And reminder, this is a special use.
Correct.
Can the site plan or the photometric plan be submitted as part of the site plan approval? We would agree to submit it either way. If you want it before, we can do that.
It's a requirement in the ordinance as part of the site plan to submit a photometric plan.
And it will be prepared and submitted. I'm just asking, can it be submitted at the site plan stage, engineering stage?
No, this is the site plan stage. We're at preliminary site plan.
Okay.
It's a requirement at this stage to have a photometric plan. It's part of the application.
And we will provide that. We agree to that.
Okay, thank you. Bring it back to the table. Thank you. Mr. Sanzica.
I'd like to resolve the special use approval and preliminary site plan approval for the proposed Bethesda Romanian Pentecostal Church Edition, north side of Long Lake, east of John R., south of Tucker, 2075 East Long Lake, Section 12, currently zoned R1C, one family residential district, be postponed for the following reasons. One, the applicant shall provide photometric and lighting fixture details for the new addition prior to the site plan approval. Two, the applicant should provide and review the existing proposed landscaping, and any provide modifications thereof to help screen the property from the adjacent neighbors. And three, look at the. I really like to look at the. Provide more detail on the sound deadening and of the existing proposed facility, and how what limits there will be for the proposed facility.
Moved by Mr. Sanzica. Can I get a second on that?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Hudson. Roll call, Ms. Sarnicki, please. Oh,
Discussion?
Discussion? Sure. Mr. Tago.
I guess I'd like to at least discuss some specificity of what are we asking him to come back with? Because right now, the landscape plan is not a landscape plan. I mean, it shows some colored dots on a drawing. There's no dimensions on it. And I want to see, what these trees, really where they're going to be planted. And I think they need to be, I mean, I look at the initial plantings, they don't hide the building at all. So how long do the neighbors have to look at that building before it really starts to take effect? So I think we need to make the point to them that we are not looking to see what we're seeing tonight. I need something more specific about what this is going to look like and how these plants need to be larger. These trees need to be larger to screen it, because the day one screening is not adequate, in my opinion. And again, I suggest that you consider alternatives or additional things other than the landscaping to help block that building. Because I mentioned a screen wall. Do a little research on how pretty and how nice screen walls can look, especially when you've got the sidewalk and pedestrians walking up and down there. It can look very nice. I'm not talking about a concrete screen wall. I'm talking about something that has some character, some integrity to it. So again, that's what I want to see when they come back from
a professional landscape architect.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Would you like to amend the motion, or?
No, it's on the record. I mean, they've heard me. So.
Any further discussion before we have the roll call?
Was it supported? Oh, yeah, it was supported, yes.
Yep. Supported by Mr. Hudson. Roll call, Ms. Sarnicki, please.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krant?
No.
Ms. Koopa?
Yes.
Mr. Zanzika?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Epinian?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Motion passes and the item is postponed. Moving on to item number 6 on the agenda. We will take, actually before we do that, we will take a 5-minute break. on to item number 6 on the agenda. Public comment for items on the current agenda.
I couldn't let her go.
There we go, we're on.
Yep, we're ready.
Item number 6, public comment for items on the current agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on one of the items, the only item on the agenda tonight? I see one. Hello.
I'm here in Ottawa Street again. I just wanted to commend you. You've got a terrible task, and I don't envy you your jobs. I really don't. I just have one question, and I guess it's to Mr. Sabadan. He mentioned that this was a good time to resolve the issues of drainage on Tucker. I know nothing about this situation. I'm still trying to educate myself. Is this the time to do that, and how do you do that? And I know you're not going to answer my question tonight, but I think it should be considered at this time. Thank you. And again, thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
So, if you don't mind, so I'm not an engineer, but if there's the appearance based on my really simple planning brain that there's at least an appearance to me that the slope of that drain and the water that during heavy rain events that hits the drain and flows into the right of way and sits there in pools, that doesn't seem to me to be a very good situation with the pooling water. So it would seem to me if there's going to be construction on that site, including doing anything to that berm, that there may be an opportunity for their engineer to factor that into the design of the site, perhaps with catch basins or what have you, to grab that water and take it away. That seems to be an opportunity if this project were to move forward. Now would be the time to do that if in fact that is the situation.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Tate.
Did engineering review the preliminary site plan? They did not.
They review these at a very, very, very high level, just to say conceptually this could work. They do not get into the details about where stormwater is going. They don't look at grading. They don't look at those kind of details at this level yet. That happens when you get to the point of approval and actual engineering review.
So if there is a problem that currently exists, they may not be aware of it when they look at this plan, and when they tell you guys it looks good to us at this point.
Right. Yep.
So let's assume we didn't have the issues that we had here tonight, and they got their approval, and they're going down the road. Now engineering takes a serious look at it, and now they're going to add how many thousands of dollars or tens of thousands because the engineer said, well, this doesn't work now. I mean, it's like, it seems like engineering may want to look I'm not saying necessarily figure out all the details, but I mean, when there's an obvious problem that we saw on a photograph, and again, I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing here.
And again, I'm not an engineer. I don't know what caused the pooling of the water there. Was it a 500-year storm event? I mean, I don't know. But certainly, because we were provided with a photograph from a resident, it indicates that there could be potentially a problem there. That's something that we can, we don't get involved as a board. We don't make conditions that are engineering related. But we can make design considerations, kind of like heads up to the engineering department saying, have a look at this.
This board or
from us.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
That's just a follow-up question to that. Does it have to be remediated as part of a new project, or if it's identified and we figure it out?
Yeah. Yes. So let's look at conversely, if the project ends up not being approved, right, this is certainly something we can have the engineering department look at. Again, I don't know what factors led to the water there. It's one photograph, but certainly, and I'll make note to give the engineers a heads up that this is potentially a situation. I'll do that tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item number 7, Planning Commission comments. We'll start with Ms. Sarnicki tonight.
None, thank you.
Mr. Krent. Mr. Hudson.
Yeah, when I use the word fantasy over objections, I was not referring to a discussion on the Planning Commission. I'll leave it at that.
Ms. Koopa.
I'm looking forward to the design standards discussion at our next commission meeting.
Mr. Tagle.
I brought this along tonight. I think everybody got a copy of this. I really encourage you to read it because, you know, we talk about raising the bar of design. This one's talking about urban design, but just some of the things they're talking about here, I think, if they don't apply directly, they certainly can be, you know, kind of tucked away in our memories and you know, just help in the discussions and help maybe verbalizing some of the things we see or some of the things we'd like to see. So I would encourage everybody. It's a small version, a small copy. That shouldn't take long to read through it. But thank you.
I have no comment, Mr. Faison.
No comment,
Mr. Sanzica.
Yeah, one thing, I had the pleasure of attending the Stormwater Summit that Oakland County presents every year at the Lawrence Tech last Friday. And what was interesting to me is that SEMCOG has a grant to review all the community's ordinances for green infrastructure and how to accommodate green infrastructure with minor modifications in our ordinances. And Troy, since it's in the George W. Kuhn Drainage District, will be participating in that. I heard the speaker. He's a very, very interesting professor from the University of San Diego. There are a lot of minor things that could be added and modifications that she's come up with. And I really, I was really impressed by what they were proposing, how they could modify or provide the developer with incentives to provide green infrastructure in their proposed developments with minor modifications to our ordinance. So I guess I just wanted to mention to Brent how impressed I was with the lady and given the opportunity for SEMCOG to have our ordinance reviewed, and I would, if possible, it might be interesting if she'd be willing to come to a meeting to do have a learning session on that. So I was very impressed, and I think I would encourage us to be more involved in the green infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Frank.
Yes, just a brief update on the Tollbrook litigation. You all refer to it as McClure. Today was the due date for my briefing. One of the issues that they raised, plaintiff appellant raised in their briefing, was kind of what happened here tonight, and that is with motions. So in the city council motion, they made the argument that the city council never denied their motion because they advanced a motion to approve and it failed, and they never took the corollary motion to deny without commenting on the efficacy of their argument. That was one of, so what happened today is, my point is, it's important to get it right at this level because it was something that was brought up in the briefing for McClure, an issue that we didn't recognize, earlier. So, anyways,
Mr. Alpha, if I may, Julie, in that regard, it's been my understanding the city attorney's office has always taken the position, at least in the zoning board, that if a motion for the variance did not get approved, there was nothing more to do because, in essence, it was denied. It wasn't approved.
But the motion that was put forward was a denial motion, not an approve.
Oh, okay, I see.
Right, that was the difference tonight.
I'm sorry, interrupt.
No, that's okay. Good question.
Yeah. So I guess lesson learned is if a motion fails, you don't want to leave it hanging. You want to pursue another motion that provides clarity on how to move forward, right?
Right.
Okay. Mr. Savna.
So speaking of green infrastructure, today planning staff had the opportunity for a tour of the Canine Club kennel, if you recall, on Maple Road. They're not quite open for business and they're still doing some tweaks to the building, but they are seeking LEED certification. They need 74 points. I think he said he's sitting at 76 points right now or something like that. He's four points over.
He needs 42, he's got 46.
42, okay, my numbers were bad. But he's 4 points over and he thinks he might lose 2, but I think he's gonna ultimately be LEED certified. But it is a fantastic building, a fantastic site, and he did offer in the future to give a tour to the Planning Commission. So Maybe when our schedule frees up in the spring, maybe we can visit some sites that have demonstrated sustainability in the site in the building. I've got 2 or 3 in mind. We can have a public meeting, have a bus trip and bus tour, and see some really cool projects in the city of Troy that are cutting edge.
Mr. Corlett.
No comment. Thank you.
No comment. Then we are adjourned. Thank you.